This podcast is about correcting the balance, whether it's something celebrated as good when it shouldn't be, or the other way around. Or maybe the heroic tales of history just need to be knocked straight on their ass. Me, I just want to share the complete picture, because that's when this whole thing gets fun. Warning, jokes and sarcasm may ensue. Welcome to Prick the Balloon. Hi, I'm Mike Vance, and welcome to what really will be the first PTB short. Yep, Prick the Balloon shorts. You know, short gets a bad rap. A short in your wiring, a shortfall in your account, those are exceptionally bad things. One of my least favorite songs by my favorite songwriter is Short People, but we are changing that stigma right here. In fact, I am changing my mind. We're going to call these Prick the Balloon Quickies, because quickies, those are good things. Hey baby, you got time for a quickie before you go back to work? Why, yes. Yes, I do. This quickie is about the WPA Guides. These were put out under the Federal Writers Project, which in its broader form is one of the best things the government ever produced in this great country. I mean, okay, NASA and Medicare, and Navy ships, and vaccines, and interstate highways, the Smithsonian museums. But the WPA Guides are wicked cool, and you'll find that phrase in the Massachusetts Guide. The guides were produced underneath the umbrella of the Works Progress Administration, the same New Deal program that built thousands of public buildings and hundreds of thousands of public roads and bridges. The idea was to take the unemployed people on government relief and hire them to build things we needed. But the WPA also had music and art and theater components, because those humanities majors can't get a goddamn job even when there's not a depression. The WPA did an amazing natural history survey. They compiled the slave narratives, which will be the subject of a future podcast. Among the most notable WPA buildings are Griffith Observatory in LA, the Dock Theater in Charleston, South Carolina, LaGuardia and Midway Airports, Houston City Hall, and Dealey Plaza in Dallas. That's right. If not for the WPA, John F. Kennedy would be in some senior facility grab-assing a nurse right now. But we're talking about the Federal Writers Project, and specifically the books they produced. Between 1937 and 1941, for the most part, these writers, who couldn't find jack shit in the way of work during the Great Depression, were sent all over the United States to produce guidebooks about all 48 states, plus Alaska and Puerto Rico, both of which were territories. One, sadly, still is. Some of the biggest cities also got their own standalone books. Hawaii didn't get a damn thing, because WPA director Harry Hopkins freaking hated spam. It really frightened him, like jumping on a chair over a cartoon mouse. Little known fact. The books had a bunch of photographs, they had essays on the state's history and culture, write-ups on the major cities, reports on agriculture, industry, driving tours of the top places to visit. My copy of the Mississippi WPA Guide even has a phone number to call Jesse Lou for a damn good time. Unfortunately, Mississippi phone numbers were only 2 digits. That was true up until the 1990s. What the hell? Let's dive in. And keep in mind, all of these are write-ups from about 85 years ago, give or take. All right, random pin. This is from Oklahoma Agriculture. Like nearly everything else in Oklahoma, agriculture's beginnings trace back to the Indians. The first scratching of its soil is credited to those semi-nomadic Aboriginal tribes who grew limited supplies of corn, beans, melons, and tobacco. They settled at first in the forested, spring-fed highlands of the eastern section, where fish and game were to be had, gradually moving farther west to the wide belts of prairie between the streams. Full-blood Indians built their cabins along the streams, planted fruit trees, gardens, and small patches of corn, raised a little cotton from which the women made their clothing, and let their hogs, cattle, and ponies run on the open range. For a time, the Creeks, more conservative than their neighbors, used the town system of agriculture they had practiced in Alabama, all of the men of a settlement working together to till a communal farm. Eventually, they too adopted individual farming methods, and each family established its cabin in the midst of its own fields. Okay, I like that one because it talks about my ancestors, the Creeks, those commie bastards. They're well written, with stylish 1930s prose that could have been narrated by Humphrey Bogart or Spencer Tracy. Alrighty, here's another random digital dart. Art in Connecticut. Another portraitist of great ability was Samuel F.B. Morse, associated with Connecticut by his years of study at Yale and the large number of portraits he executed within the state. Morse was well trained in France and Europe, and his best canvases leave little to be desired. He had simplicity without emptiness, dexterity without virtuosity, style without mannerism, and the characters of his subjects fairly leap from the canvas. When, during the middle 40s, he sickened of the smallness of his rewards and turned to electrical experimentation, applied science took a great step forward, but American painting suffered an irreparable loss. Yeah, Morse invented the telegraph, of course, and it's his name on the little ... dash code. Changed the world, so he must have been a really good painter. Sorry, there's no way to get a message all the way to the doctor up in New Haven, so I suspect your great-grandmother's gonna die. But here's a handsome oil-on canvas to look over. All right, here's a bit from a New Mexico driving tour down Route 66 from Albuquerque. US 66 passes the fertile farms and orchards of the Rio Grande Valley. Beyond these are arid grass-covered plains and plateaus that sweep toward mountains. The gray-green clumps of sage, desert grasses, and low bushes, yellow with flowers in summer and autumn, meet the blue-green trees that dot the sides of hills and mountains. The road cuts through occasional stretches of earth whose vivid reds and yellows sharpen the contrast with the soft, deep blue of the mountains and the brilliant turquoise of the spreading sky. It is a landscape of changing colors. Brilliantly colored geologic formations appear, some with smooth contours, and others with the sharp outlines of a violent upthrust. Near the road are a few tiny villages of Indians or Spanish-speaking Americans, or the solitary dwelling of a Navajo family. This is a sparsely peopled region whose lifeblood is water. Where it flows is nurture. For more than 400 years, over parts of this route, on roads branching from it, have moved soldiers of fortune, prospectors, priests and missionaries, colonists and caravans, traders and trappers, thieves and murderers, sheep herders and cowboys with their herds and flocks. Where the dwellers of the plains once roamed and hunted, docile sheep now set the mood, supply food and covering, and signify capital resources. That's fun, huh? And these tours, they explore all the little towns and villages on the way or nearby. It is like a perfect little time capsule. This is from the entry on Cebolleta, a little town of 413.8 miles up a dirt road from Route 66 at an altitude of 7,500 feet. Where I grew up, our highest point was a highway overpass, and I am not making that up. When colonists were sent up from Mexico, the Navajo regarded them as invaders and waged war. There is a long record of strife in the old Spanish archives. The colonists were aided from time to time by friendly Laguna Indians who hated the Navajo, and by a detachment of soldiers who were sent to garrison the fort. But time and again, their cherished crops were stolen. In later years, when the villages grew stronger, the young men of the town would go out on raids and steal Navajo boys and girls for slaves. It was the custom when a marriage was arranged in the town to give the Cebolletenos an order for 1 or 2 Navajo boys or girls as a wedding present. The town now has a day school, whose curriculum includes 2 years of high school, and a vocational school established in 1936 for those over 16, who are taught tanning and woodworking. Tanning and woodworking. Same hobbies as the Kardashian girls. If you've never read John Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie, you need to. It's billed as nonfiction, but all sorts of critics have come out since then parsing it to death and questioning it. The guy was a novelist, for Christ's sake, so yeah, a lot of the dialogue was surely made up. But it's a good book, assholes. And that is my official review, by the way. It's about Steinbeck driving around the country being kept company by his standard poodle. He wrote it in 1962 when he knew he was dying, and as he prepared to go, he talked about not having space to load all of the WPA Guides into his little camper. Quote, "If there had been room, I would have packed the WPA Guides to the States, all 48 volumes of them. The complete set comprises the most comprehensive account of the United States ever got together, and nothing since has approached it." End quote. I think you can find some parts of most of the state ones on Google Books, but there's a ton missing from those two. The tours are the coolest parts, and hardly any of those seem to be digitized. More importantly, there's something about finding an old hardbound library copy from 80-plus years ago and doing a little armchair time travel. All right, that is your Prick the Balloon Quickie, and for God's sake, at least smooth your hair down before you go back to the office. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out my website at MikeVanceWriter.com. Prick the Balloon is copyrighted by Mike Vance, all rights reserved.